Hello, and welcome to the TerraLex Insights podcast, where our goal is to present multicultural perspectives by leading professionals. These perspectives on contemporary issues will help lawyers and business people work better together. I'm your host, Terry Pepper-Gavlik, TerraLex's Chief Business Officer. Today, we're delighted to be speaking with Dr. Isaac Prilleltensky, former Dean of the School of Education and Human Development at the University of Miami in Miami, Florida in the USA, where he serves currently as the Vice Provost for Institutional Culture. Dr. Prilleltensky works with individuals, organizations, and communities to promote well-being, and I think it's a topic everyone needs to hear. My team that I work with and I have been talking about the impact of this prolonged stay at home on our well-being, and so we welcome you to the podcast today. And let's start by asking you a bit about your origin story. So tell us about the work that you're doing and how you came to do that, because I think our listeners will find your work with well-being quite interesting.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I grew up in Argentina, and unfortunately I lost my parents when I was 8 years old. And that was a long time ago. And as you can imagine, people weren't too sensitive to trauma or to grieving or mental health issues 50 plus years ago. And I grew up thinking that I want to become a psychologist so that I could help other people deal with difficult situations. And I think that led me to an interest in well-being and how to improve mental health, how to assist people overcome challenges. So that's one side of the story, my interest in well-being, how to improve how we feel, how we act in the world. That's one side of the story. The second side of the story is that I grew up in a dictatorship. I grew up in Argentina in the 60s and 70s, where there was a military dictatorship. And there was a great deal of repression. And that led me to be very sensitive to issues of justice and fairness and social policies and how societies operate and democracy. So I have combined these two interests in what I call wellness and fairness. So how do we develop wellness in individuals, organizations, and communities? And how that wellness is tied to fairness? Because when there is social fairness, organizational fairness, interpersonal fairness, we all just feel better and our well-being goes up. So that's a little bit of the story about my interest both in the personal side as well as the systemic side of well-being.
Well, and certainly all over the world right now, I think people are feeling a little stress on their sense of fairness and sense of well-being. And so I'm sure your work is ever more important than even maybe in any time in my history. But it begs the natural question, and looking at it as the three constituents that you laid out, the individuals, the communities, and the workplaces or organizations, what are some of the things that these different constituents can do or should do to attend to well-being and fairness, and especially with this overlay of the global pandemic? What are some of their options?
Okay. I think it's important to attend to all the domains of well-being. And my research team and I developed a model of well-being, which is called I COPPE. And it stands for interpersonal, community, occupational, physical, psychological, and economic well-being. So we have these 6 domains of well-being. And people during the pandemic need to be able to identify what's the low-hanging fruit for me. Which one of these 6 domains can I really capitalize on? So on one hand, people are feeling lonely, right? People are not connecting as much. So what can we do to improve our interpersonal well-being, our community well-being? If you are feeling that you don't exercise enough because you can go out, you can go to the gym. What can you do at home in order to do some yoga or stretching? Or I bought a treadmill during the pandemic because we have a very nice gym in our building, which I cannot go to.
Right.
So I approach this issue from a diversification point of view. You have 6 domains of well-being: interpersonal, community, physical, psychological, etc. And I would ask myself, how can I make 1% increase in each one of these domains every day? What can I do to improve my physical well-being? What can I do to improve my psychological well-being? Can I introduce mindfulness meditation in my life? What can I do to improve community well-being? Maybe I can join an organization, even if virtually, to contribute to the well-being of others. For example, I'm coaching pro bono right now. I am a certified well-being coach. So I'm trying to reach out to people. I want to feel like I'm adding value to the community. So I suggest that people always remember 2 things. We want to feel valued, and we want to add value. So ask yourself, how can I add value at work, in the community, in my family? What is the 1 or 2 things I can do to make a contribution to the world? When you do that, you're igniting a virtuous cycle that is going to make you feel valued because you're adding value. People are going to say, oh, thank you, Isaac, for what you did. So I just gave 1 example. I increased my pro bono coaching because I feel people are hurting and I have something to offer. So look at all the buckets of well-being. Ask yourself, how can I improve 1% every day? And if not every day, every week, what is 1 more thing you can do? And then eventually you feel better psychologically, you feel better physically, and they begin to synergize, because the stronger I feel physically, the better I feel psychologically, etc. So ask yourself, how can I improve 1%?
So it's actually quite a relief, I think, to hear you say that for someone like me who's an overachiever. And I feel like if I'm not doing 100% in all those categories, that somehow I'm not doing enough. It's nice to have the permission to think about it much more incrementally. So, and I think a lot of people probably, especially in the legal industry, a lot of people probably fall into that category. Speaking of the industry and sort of the workplaces and the organizations, a lot of our listeners are on leadership teams and, manage law firms or corporations, law departments in big companies. Within the workplace, is it the same thing? Use the I COPPE model, and and how do you help others in your organization overcome some of these problems and challenges to well-being?
So if I am a manager, if I am a leader, if I have people who report to me, or even if I'm just a colleague, without any official senior title, I would ask you, look at the I COPPE domains of life and think about yourself and think about your colleagues. And ask yourself, how can I improve my colleagues' well-being in any one of these domains? And it can be as simple as starting a recognition program. So are you paying attention to the good work your colleagues are doing? Are you writing thank you notes? Are you appreciating what people are doing? It's amazing what recognition programs can do, okay? Can you institute a mindfulness meditation program in the workplace 2-3 times a week, 15-20 minutes? Can you give your employees time to go out for a walk? Try to institutionalize little habits that are going to improve the I COPPE domains, first of all, of your colleagues, but also pay attention to yourself. What can I do at work to improve any one of these domains? Because although occupational well-being is one domain, it's not just about performance. It's not just about productivity at work, but it's also how do I get along with my colleagues. So I think the I COPPE is like a map. When you are lost and you don't know how to improve well-being, look at the 6 domains and ask yourself, what's the low-hanging fruit? Where can I start? What can I do for my colleagues? And what can I do for myself at work? And I think if you remember nothing else from this conversation, it should be try to help your colleagues feel valued. What can you do to make them feel valued? How can you add value to them and to yourself? And then that ignites the virtuous cycle.
Excellent advice. And I'm actually looking forward to sharing this podcast with my colleagues and seeing where we've done some great stuff, but we all are feeling the strain. I think we can probably do some more. So in your research, you've also developed another model called the Bet I Can model. And I was wondering if you would tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So to make it simple for people to change, what we are doing is translating science into practice. So the Bet I Can model of change consists of drivers of change that are based on B for behaviors, E for emotions, T for thoughts, interactions, context, awareness, and next steps. So we built a change machine. It's a platform. It's called funforwellness.com. So we use these drivers of change to teach people specific skills. How do I leverage my behaviors? If you think about what do you do from the moment you get up, you behave in certain ways. You brush your teeth, you drink your coffee, you go for a walk. These are behaviors, right? And also you go through myriad emotions during the day. You feel high, you feel low, you feel up, you feel happy, you feel disappointed. Emotions. Thoughts. Oh my goodness, we experience thousands and thousands of thoughts every day. So we took all these domains of life, behaviors, emotions, thoughts, interactions, etc., and we converted them into specific skills. So I'll give you an example. Behaviors. Well, how can we create a positive habit? A positive habit, for instance, is to do something better 1% every day. That's a habit. I have lots and lots of habits. My life is pretty much automated. I get up in the morning, I have a nice healthy breakfast, then I exercise for an hour, and then I start working, and then I have a healthy lunch and so I have lots of habits. I'm very disciplined. We teach people how to create positive habits by doing it gradually, by reinforcing yourself. Behaviors. We also teach people how to set a goal. Many people don't have SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable. We teach people under emotions how to collect positive emotions. A lot of people know that they should cope with negative emotions, but what can you do to increase your emotional positive bank account? So, expressing gratitude, celebrating each other's accomplishments, finding the silver lining, mindfulness meditation, etc., etc. So we articulated all these strategies in funforwellness.com and also in a trilogy of books. It's called The Laughing Guides, and people can, if I go to my website, professorisaac.com, Professor Isaac with double A, ISAAC.com, they can see these trilogies, The Laughing Guide to Wellbeing, The Laughing Guide to Change, and The Laughing Guide to a Better Life. And we combine humor with science in order to teach these skills. So the whole purpose is to make it easy, achievable, doable, and non-threatening We don't want people to feel like, oh my goodness, change is this tremendous Sisyphean boulder I have to lift every day. No, change can be easy and simple.
Excellent. And talking about adding humor and laughter and fun, I know, and it's probably because you are so disciplined that you find the time to do this, but I know that you also are a humorist. So maybe talk a little bit about what you do. I mean, are you doing, comedy clubs or corporate presentations, or what do you do in your humorist career?
Well, so most of all, I publish for a local newspaper. I started publishing for the Miami Herald, and then I moved to Miami Today, which is a weekly newspaper in Miami, and I also have a blog. So I write. I mainly write. Once in a while, I make a stand-up appearance, but I guess my professorial career hasn't enabled me the time to dedicate to the comedy clubs as much as maybe I would like to. But really, my outlet has been writing. And when we started this platform, funforwellness.com, I thought, well, let's write some funny stuff so people can feel that change and well-being are not these threatening things. So let's make it fun for people. And I started writing for the platform and for the newspapers. And before I know it, I won an award from the National Newspaper Association for a satirical column I wrote about Miami. I write a lot about self-deprecation and by extension to Miami deprecation. That's where I live. So I poke fun at my city, I poke fun at myself. So that has been really a lot of fun.
And honestly, I don't think the power of humor can be understated. I know with my team, humor is what keeps us, it's the gel that binds us. It keeps us together. We enjoy our time together, which we try to meet every single day on Zoom. And it's because it's fun and funny, and we keep a WhatsApp group of the team, and we're constantly making each other laugh in there. So even not just on a person individually, but on an organization, I think humor can play a really important role as long as it's, appropriate and and our team is very respectful of each other. But I definitely can see the benefit of humor.
Absolutely.
Some really good things for our listeners to unpack here. And before we conclude, maybe just sum up a little bit. I think for me, one of the biggest messages I took from your notes just now is the incrementalism piece, that you don't have to build Rome in a day. At 1% solution or 1% each day really moves the ball forward. I have found that to be true in my own life, but it's really, really reinforcing to hear it. Other wrap-up tips that you'd like to share with our audience, who I know are all struggling with various issues and of well-being?
To build on what you said, just pick one thing you can do better or that you can improve with. And please do not hyper-focus on any one domain to the neglect of others. Some people have amazing physiques and they are an emotional mess. Okay? Some people are extremely happy and they neglect their body. So it's really important to do a self-audit of all the I COPPE domains and think, how am I doing interpersonally? How am I doing in the community? How am I doing at work? And I think if you pick one or two goals, more than two is bad, okay? You just have to start with one or two simple goals that you can do gradually, reinforce yourself, tell your friends you are working on something, so they will hold you accountable. Have a specific plan that's called implementation intentions. If you want to walk more, have a precise time and a precise place and a date where you're going to do this. The more specific our plan becomes, the more achievable it is. So that's my message. Pick one or two things, low-hanging fruit. Don't try to run a marathon, after you exercise for 3 weeks. Do something simple, reinforce yourself, tell other people, make it specific.
Fantastic advice from our guest, Dr. Isaac Prilleltensky. We really appreciate you joining us on the TerraLex Insights podcast. And I am going to run and look at your websites right now for some of those resources, because I do think that your messages will resonate with others as much as it did with me. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.